Hello again, YouTube peeps, Harbor Freight fans. This is an add-on video to talk about an issue with Harbor Freight's swing down use of Harbor Freight's swing down jack on these heavy duty, or what they call the super duty folding trailer, the Harbor Freight model that's featured in a bunch of my other videos. Here's a jack on the trailer, as I've shown previously. You can see I put a screwdriver in here to when I'm storing it, just to keep the jack from moving around. But when the trailer's fully loaded, as I noted in the comments on my video on the jack, you can see that the jack has a tendency, especially when you're trying to move it around, to twist the tongue arm that it's attached to. So one of the things you can do to minimize that is locate the jack as close as you can to this joint, because what that's going to do is prevent too much twisting if you're moving the jack around when the trailer's fully loaded. On my last trip, I had a pretty heavy load in there, and I could visibly see the tongue arm getting twisted by the jack to a point where I got a little worried that over time it's going to weaken the tongue arm and potentially even cause it to collapse, because it's not a closed tube. It's open on one side. So I guess there's a couple of different ways you could deal with that, but what I chose to do was have a friend of mine with a welder put together a brace to go across from here to here, and that way isolate any twisting caused by the jack to the section of the tongue arm between this heavy joint here and wherever you put the brace behind the jack here. So this is what we came up with. I had this brace fabricated by my buddy. You can see how it's put together. It's a little crude, and it's probably overkill for what I actually need for this bracing job, but we did it from materials that he had on hand, and I think it's going to do the job real nicely. So the way it goes in is you just slip it in here, put it on both sides of the tongue arms, and you can see how it fits in place there. So I'll be bolting these in place with 3/8 standard bolts. Those are the same dimensions as you use for pretty much all the structural joints on this trailer. It's a 3/8 size, or it's a metric equivalent of that. And then so this will just be bolted on the top and the bottom. Not a single bolt going all the way through, but separate 3/4 inch bolts. I think those will be long enough. So a total of 8 bolts with matching nuts on the top and the bottom, and so that will basically isolate any twisting of the jack to the section of the bar between these 2 points, and it'll also just help strengthen up, firm up the whole tongue assembly. So that's what I wanted to add on and show you, and I'll probably splice on a bit on the video at the end to show it when I've completed the installation. Thanks. Okay, YouTubers, here's the finished installation on this cross brace, and this kind of gives me an opportunity to review a couple other things that I've mentioned in comments on one or two of the other videos I've done. Here's the brace installed, and I'm really happy with it. It came out really nice. A couple of little program notes: if you're going to do something like this, you definitely want to attach the flanges to the factory tongue arm on both sides. Don't put a long bolt that goes all the way through from the top to the bottom, because the effect of that is going to be, when you tighten the bolt, it's going to want to pinch. It's going to want to pinch this the tongue arm, which will, I don't know if it'll create enough of a weak point to be a safety problem, but I wanted to reinforce the existing structure as opposed to put something in there that might affect its stress bearing capability negatively. So I did it this way with separate bolts on the top and the bottom, and as you can see on this side here, you can kind of see in there in the how the bolt fits. And I ended up having to I think in the other section I mentioned they were 3/4 inch 3/4 inch length 3/8 bolts. I had to go back and get full inch in order to, you know, match up the length of the added washers and the size of the bolt and all that, or the nut rather, to make it fit right. And at 1 inch they were fine with the thickness of this material, the material of the tongue arm and the washers and stuff that came out nice, and I was able to get a wrench in there and on the inside and tighten them down properly. Paint for the trailer color, I matched up this product, which is a Rust-Oleum product. It's a satin finish called Colonial Red, and came out really nice. It's not a perfect match for the trailer, the factory color, but it's pretty darn close. And you know, in certain lighting conditions you really can't tell the difference at all. That came out nice. On the tongue box, I mentioned in another video that I had to repaint the lid because the factory paint was chipping both on the inside of this edge and the outside, all the way around the whole thing. And that obviously wasn't going to do because it was starting to rust the material underneath. So I took the tongue box off and I masked the bottom, the main box, and painted the lid edges. Well, I painted the whole exterior of the lid and did the edges on the inside because they were chipping as well. Had to get in there as best I could and chip out the loose paint and mask the inner part, and then just spray the lid on the inside. But I sprayed the whole thing, and so you can see that's a satin finish Rust-Oleum product as well. This stuff here, which is satin black, what is it, Canyon black is what they call it, but it's good paint. Hopefully it'll do a better job than the factory paint. And I started that job with this primer product, also from Rust-Oleum. So I primed all the surfaces I was going to paint, and then put the black as a finish on it. And then you can see the difference between the new paint on the lid and the factory paint on the main box. When I painted the lid, I actually intended to paint the whole thing to make it uniform, but once I got into the lid and saw how much time that took me to mask it and do the painting, I took another look at the box, and I decided to not bother with painting the box because it's still intact. It's obviously is not weathering well, but it is still intact, and there's no visible break-in in the surface of the paint or any rust appearing anywhere on the exterior. So I just decided to leave that for now and see how the top one wears, how it wears with the weather. I think it's going to hold up a lot better than the factory paint, and it actually is. You'd never think it from looking at the way the finish came out newly painted and that, but that is actually the way it looks when it comes out of the factory box when you buy the tongue box. Because if you lift the lid, you can see what the original paint looked like. See that? The difference? The weathered area, the not weathered area that's under the lid edge. That's what it looks like when you get it new. So when it was new, and you can see it on the inner lid too, when it was new, it actually looked like that. And after just, I don't know, what, a couple months of being, out and on the trailer and in the weather, it's turned into kind of a flat gray, which is okay. I don't really care about the cosmetic appearance of the tongue box, but what I care about is that it's got a coat of paint on it that properly resists weather and, any rust. So, I'll look at that again in a while and see how the lid fares with the new paint on it. And if it starts to bug me, I'll repaint the main box in the same way. Anyway, I'm really happy with the improvement in the structure with this cross brace. It's probably too heavy duty, a little too heavy duty for it to match the components of the trailer, but I'd rather err on that side than being too wimpy. And it's definitely made the tongue assembly more rigid. And as you can see, the whole idea is my clamp here for the tongue jack is now isolated between this the heavy joint that supports the hitch and the brace. It's all the twisting pressure is isolated between these 2 points. And that was the main reason I did it. But generally speaking, I like the way it came out. And so hopefully this will also be something for all you Harbor Freight fans out there to consider as a modification, a helpful modification to your to the tongues on your Super Duty HF trailers. Thanks, and enjoy.